This is the Wealth Standard Podcast, the gold standard in all things financial.
Hi, welcome to the Wealth Standard Podcast. This is Patrick Donahoe. You are listening to episode 202, and it's pretty awesome. I say that about every episode, and I don't know. I really love the podcast. I love talking to people. I love interviewing people. And this guy, he's actually a client of ours and become a really good friend, really inspiring. And he was doing some really cool things with the Keller Williams group. Now, if you don't know who Keller Williams is, you probably do, but it is the biggest real estate agency company in the world, run by Gary Keller, who is a billionaire. And Geoff, just through serendipity, had some amazing events happen in his life that got him to move from the West Coast to Austin, Texas, to head up a kind of a personal development company of Gary Keller's, working right alongside him. It's called The One Thing. And The One Thing is a book. It's actually one of the best-selling business books of the last several years. And I loved it when I first read it. Didn't really understand how profound the principles were, but I have some exciting news. So Geoff has been working on this whole idea for, I think it's been a year and a half or so, and they developed a membership. So Geoff and I are going to talk about that, and we're going to explain some really cool opportunities that you have to actually implement something that is life-changing. It's a literal game changer. Now, if you've been listening for a while, Geoff has spoken on the Cash Flow Wealth Summit a few times, and he is really motivational, ton of energy. You're going to love it. So without further ado, here's the interview with Mr. Geoff Woods.
Hey everyone, I am with a good friend of mine, and you're going to be blown away. If you haven't heard this guy already, man, you're going to be like, how come I haven't heard this guy? It's going to be an amazing interview. It's with Geoff Woods. Geoff Woods is Vice President of The One Thing. And after hearing the Jim Rohn quote that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, Geoff set out on a mission to surround himself with high-level CEOs and successful entrepreneurs. Fast forward just 10 months, Geoff went from employee to entrepreneur, launching a company with the co-authors of the best-selling book, The One Thing. Geoff has been featured in entrepreneur.com and is on a mission to teaching people how to live a life of focus so that they can have more by doing less. Geoff, what's up, man? How you doing?
Amazing, Patrick. Glad to be here.
You look amazing. Some people are listening on this on audio. You can go to YouTube. You can check Geoff out. You look amazing, man. You're all smiles. You look happy.
It's nothing compared to you. Look at you with your haircut.
I know. My wife makes me do it.
Oh, there you go.
I can't leave the house without my hair looking halfway decent.
There you go.
So Geoff, all right. So first, for the audience, this is. I told you this when we were just on the before we started recording. I would say this is one of the most significant podcasts that I've done in a long time. And the reason being is I've had a ton of experiences over the last just 9 months that have made me call into question really everything associated with my business. And looking at, The One Thing, I read it right when it came out. I've heard it a number of times from different speakers, and it was so simple, so easy. And typically with me and my complex, weird, crazy mind, right? It was a little too simple, and it didn't necessarily have the significance because I didn't really see much application to it other than, what's the one thing that'll make things easier or obsolete? It sounds so easy, but yet how profound the philosophy is to a business owner, to an individual. It's life-changing. And I kind of went on a crusade for a couple months with books and podcasts, trying to figure out productivity, leadership, purpose, meaning. And after I've kind of gone through what we're going to be discussing today, which is your new membership, so many things just hit me. And I am so grateful that you approached me, that we can actually give this opportunity for our listeners, because it doesn't matter, I don't think, who they are. Because whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a mom, whether you're, you work in a corporation, there's so much inside of this philosophy that will revolutionize people's lives. And so, man, I just need to start asking you questions so that you can split your guts, because you're living this firsthand from, as we stated in your bio, from masters of this. So I would say the first thing I would ask is, for the neophyte, for the person that's never, heard of Gary Keller, the one thing, why don't you just give kind of a quick backstory as to who he is and the whole philosophy?
Sure. So Gary Keller started Keller Williams Realty, which is the largest real estate company in the world. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the titans of their industry, you look at the Rockefellers, Jobs, Elon Musk, Gary's that for the real estate industry. Part at the core of what has allowed Gary to scale Keller Williams from this small little real estate company in Austin, Texas to now 155,000 agents across the globe is models and systems. We, in the book, talk about this idea of moving from E to P, moving from being entrepreneurial to being purposeful. Mm-hmm. So many of us as entrepreneurs, as business owners, we wake up every day and we build the parachute after we've jumped out of the plane. Right? We figure the solution out every single day. You're taking action. You're getting results. You're failing. You're tweaking. You're taking more action. You're figuring it out. The challenge is you will forever have a ceiling of achievement over your head as long as you act entrepreneurially. If you ever want to break through that ceiling of achievement, you have to identify models and systems that will allow you to shatter that ceiling. And as a result, the ceiling just gets raised. And then you have to identify the next steps of models and systems. The one thing is when Gary looked out and said, what is the surprisingly simple truth behind extraordinary results? What are the models and systems that someone can follow, whether you are a stay-at-home mom or you want to become a billionaire? Just tried and true principles. That's what the book is.
So I would say, first off, amazing explanation. And looking at those that have achieved that level, right? They're the ones that they get to this point. It's kind of like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You scale up to the hierarchy. You've hit your esteem. You've hit this as you call it, kind of a glass ceiling, and you figure out your self-actualization. You figure out, okay, what is my purpose? What is going to drive me? And that's where it's kind of like it fulfills, I would say, the natural compulsion that we have to contribute, to give back, to provide value to others. I think that you can see that as part of a lot of different behavior, even kind of in the lower rungs of that hierarchy. But looking at Gary Keller, getting to that level of success, he wanted to essentially figure out a way to apply. I'm just articulating this. I don't even know if this is true, but figure out a way in which you can take, okay, here are the tenets of my success. Here's how I can give that to the world. And that's what, that's how I see the one thing and the experience that I've had with it, because it is, you look at the Elon Musks of the world, the Jeff Bezos of the world, the Mark Benioffs of the world. And it's like, they have a very similar philosophy, and I never made really those connections until recently. Mm-hmm. Okay, so give us your story. Like, how did you? You're in Southern California, living an amazing life, and then you have this opportunity in Austin, Texas. So tell us about kind of the backstory behind the one thing and how you got involved.
Sure. So I was in medical device sales for 5 years in Southern California, which awesome job. I was wearing scrubs every day, running through hospitals, selling a device that actually saved lives, which was super cool. Yet, and I'm sure a lot of people who are watching or listening to this can understand that while things may be good or you may be happy, you lack fulfillment. You don't wake up every day feeling like you're living your calling. Just something's missing. And that's where I was. It took two things that forced me to pause and reflect and seek clarity on what I really wanted. First was a colleague of mine had a stroke. He was just 35 years old. At the time, my wife and I had just had our first child. We just bought a house. She's a stay-at-home mom. I'm realizing as the sole provider for the family, if I were my colleague, what would happen to my family? That was extraordinarily unsettling. As nice as the death benefit of doing business with you, Patrick, would have been for them, it wouldn't have covered it. The very next week, my company had to make a change to our commission structure. And overnight, I lost 40% of my income, which anybody who's listening to this who has suffered a massive pay cut or a devastating job loss knows just how dire that can be. That forced me, that there was enough pain that I finally needed to make a change. That's when I heard that Jim Rohn quote, "You're the average of the 5 people." I looked out and said, where do I really want to be? And I knew I wanted to own a big business that made a massive impact, that delivered real security. I set out on that mission to surround myself with business owners, and Jay ended up who co-authored The One Thing with Gary, ended up being our keynote speaker at our national sales meeting. I cornered him. I interviewed him for my podcast called The Mentee, and just kept building the relationship. And an opportunity came for me to move to Austin to start this company with Gary and Jay.
What do you see that common theme, Geoff, with just when a person kind of the whole idea, the art of fulfillment, getting to this point where, you know, you're uncomfortable and the pain of staying the same becomes worse than the pain of making a change, which is also painful. Is that a recurring theme? Is that happening over and over and over? Is there a way do you think there's a way to avoid that, or is that just how things occur?
I think every single one of us, well, you look at the brain and the way that it's set up, you know, our brain does not get excited about change, because change could be saber-toothed tiger waiting for you outside. So it normalizes whatever your current environment is. And anytime you deviate too far from that, just like a thermostat will kick on the heat or the AC, your brain is going to kick something on that's going to say, no, stay comfortable. That's why we self-sabotage. Now, how do you overcome that? Well, either circumstances happen in your life that elevate the pain, you have the right people in your world who are able to bring accountability to the table and help you realize that you need to make a change. Outside of that, people just don't do it.
No, and that's where I've asked myself the same question. I've seen kind of that recurring theme in books where you're naturally wired to grow, right? Naturally wired to do more, a little bit more. I think we're also wired to really take our uniqueness and figure out a way to provide that to the world. Whether you call that a purpose or unique ability, I think we're all driven to get to that point. But you're right. It's like this. You get to this point where, you know, you're okay. Like you achieved, like, wow, I wanted to get a good job and have good benefits and live in a cool place and have a house and have a family. I mean, all these like check is done, and it's kind of like, okay, well, what's next? And I think one of the I know you're a fan of Simon Sinek, but that's one of the things that hit me really hard is, you know, his explanation of the infinite and finite game, right? Where he called, you know, the finite game, which is like the game that typically everybody is playing. It's like, it's why, you know, United Airlines, they have this kind of code of conduct, and it's like, we have to hit our quarterly numbers, we have to do this. And that's why, like, they're being led by doing whatever it takes to hit a figure, and that's why they'll drag a person and beat them up to get them off the plane, right? It's also why fraud's committed. So it's really this, you know, there's this idea behind the infinite game, which is doing something, living to keep on living, working to keep on working, not for some end. It's because you're living through purpose and you're living through values. And I think we're all kind of naturally compelled to do that, but it's one of those things where, you know, it's very difficult to break through that barrier. And I would say typically, you know, it's someone, you know, having a medical issue or unfortunate event. And that's kind of what happened to me in December. My niece was, you know, same age as my oldest daughter, was diagnosed with stage 3 lymphoma. And and it's my brother's one of my best friends, and we always spend time together. So it was like an event that was like, and it's not my daughter, but yet it hit me so hard where it's like, I mean, wow, I don't know what it was, right? But it's one of those events that just like hits you and makes you think about, okay, what am I doing? What's my purpose? Like, am I really making a difference? And is it worth spending the majority of my time, you know, in an office or doing something and having the opportunity cost of not being there for my family and providing and so forth? And it's not just like a physical being, but it's also like a mental being present with them. And so you look at just the significance of this book, and in a sense, it's like a guide map to figure out how to get through that ceiling. So talk about that. I mean, talk about what, and maybe some examples of what you've seen of people implementing the philosophy and going from this state of like okayness to fulfillment.
Sure. Well, at the core is our most valuable resource, time, right? It's the one thing we can't get more of. The challenge is that society has actually set us up to waste our time. We were never taught how to value it, how to invest it correctly, how to say no to things that will take our time away. Jay, my partner who co-authored the book with Gary, asked me a question. He said, well, you know, what are people's biggest challenges with time? I didn't have a good answer for him. So I set out on a mission to figure it out. And over the last 4 months, I've been working very, very closely with 305 people, many of them high achievers, business owners, entrepreneurs, to really understand when it comes to your time, what are your biggest challenges? We realize there's 3 specific things that hold people back more than anything else. The first one is a lack of clarity, meaning people do not know their purpose. They don't know why they're here. Most people don't even know what they really want. They know what they think they should want based on what society says, make more money, get financially free, blah, blah, blah. But what do you actually want out of life? People don't know.
Nope.
What are your real goals? How are you going to achieve your real goals? People don't know. They lack clarity. So as a result, they just blindly march forward based on whatever society says they should be doing. That's why you have so many people who have the quote midlife crises, where they look up and realize they've been climbing the ladder, but it's been leaning against the wall the entire time, the wrong wall the entire time. So people lack clarity.
And you've been building somebody else's purpose, not yours.
Correct. So number 1, people lack clarity. Number 2, people lack control. When people look at their calendar, they see meetings they feel like they need to attend. They see a bunch of tasks they feel like they really need to do, but that aren't actually that important. If someone stops by and says, hey, do you got a minute? They feel like they have to say yes because they don't want to disappoint them. They're not really in control. And finally, they lack the right community. They're not surrounded by a community of people who challenge them to think differently, who stretch their mind in terms of what's possible, who understand that it's okay for you to say yes to your one thing first before you acknowledge everyone else's responsibilities and priorities. When you take these 3 things out of the equation, that's why people struggle the way that they do. But when you can seek clarity, when you can start to take back control of your time and have the people around you to support you, that's where extraordinary results happen.
Would you mind maybe walking us through when you got to the point where it's like you knew, wow, like I understand this philosophy that I'm a part of. I understand what my purpose is, what I'm doing, and maybe walk us through that and then tell us what life has been like since.
Sure. Well, it was a struggle at first because the idea of the one thing is look at all the things you could do, identify the one thing you should do first, the one thing that you can do such that by doing it makes everything else easier or unnecessary. Most people, when they start trying to live the one thing, end up having kind of a Goldilocks syndrome where initially they're not bringing enough priority into their life. They don't time block enough, meaning scheduling time with yourself to do your most important work. They don't do enough. They're doing too little. Then they hear the concepts and they go, oh, I'm in a time block. And they try to time block every minute of every single day. They try to act perfectly in order of priority. And when you do too much, when you set the bar too high and you constantly come under it, you feel like a failure. Mm-hmm. You're only willing to allow yourself to feel like a failure for so long before you rewrite the story so that you don't have to feel like a failure. That's why people give up. That's why so many people quit New Year's resolutions 7 days in. Mm-hmm. But then, should you have the right community, the right accountability, the right mentorship, the right guidance, you're able to find that sweet spot that's just right, where you learn how to think really big in terms of your vision for your life, and you learn to start by acting really, really small. Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. A woman we work with named Peggy. She had just gone through a really rough patch. Her husband had just passed away. She looks up, analyzing her life, realizing she has developed a series of really unhealthy habits over decades. She's unfulfilled in her career. She needs to make a change. And that's when we started working together. We asked her, what's the one thing that you can do? Like, what's that one area of your life that you really want to improve? And she said, my business. And we said, great. What's the one thing you can do for your business? She said, lead generate every day. Awesome. 4 weeks into lead generating, she began to notice that she was always tired. Then she began to notice that when she was with her clients, she lacked confidence because when she looked in the mirror, she didn't respect the woman that she saw because she just was unhealthy. She then realized her one thing was truly getting her health under control. And the one thing she could do, so think big, health under control. The one thing she could do to get her health under control was to get to the gym regularly. The one thing she could do to get to the gym regularly was to sign up for a boot camp class so there was accountability. And the one thing she could do to make sure that she got to that boot camp class was to be in her gym clothes and out the door by 5:33 p.m. every workday. Think big, act small. The thing that she tracked, her one thing, was being in her gym clothes and out the door by 5:33 p.m. every day. When you look at your life, when you look at your goals, are your goals a result, or are they a specific, measurable action that you can do, that you can track? That's the shift.
So with Peggy, and I'm sure you've seen like a number of cases, it's one of those things where, you know, it's painful. Obviously, getting out the door, going to a boot camp. Like if you haven't like worked out before and now you're going to go to like a boot camp, it sounds like, oh yeah, it's hard. I mean, especially like the first couple of weeks, because you're probably, you know, hardly able to get out of bed. And so what, you know, really with Peggy, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but like what was her compelling why? Like what got her, like what was it that was like, I have to overcome this
hers was a 1-2 punch.
Physical, mental, whatever.
Hers was a 1-2 punch. Her husband passing away was the natural thing for her to look up and say, I need to make a change. But it was when she's focusing on her business and realizing that she doesn't have energy or confidence because she's so unhealthy. That was the second. And that's when she realized focus on health. The crazy part is just 6 weeks of her doing one thing, getting in her gym clothes, which if you're going to get in the gym clothes and out the door, you're going to show up to the gym, people.
Yeah.
She dropped 20 pounds. But that's not the best part, because all of a sudden she had more energy. And when she was with her clients, she was more confident and her sales started to go up. So when you do one thing, the right thing, it ends up toppling over many things.
Well, and that's the one, looking at the whole kind of like infinite and finite game, right? It's like working out. First off, I think most people will say, yeah, if I'm healthy, like that is one thing. That's the one thing that does make everything else easier, right? Because health equals vitality, it equals energy, it equals focus. I mean, if you don't have that, then I'm not sure, you know, if you understand the concept in a sense. So right. I would say that, you know, the one thing associated with working out is that people don't attach it to that something meaningful. And that's where it becomes this finite game. I'm going to lose 10 pounds. I'm going to lose 20 pounds. It's like there's this finite end to working out, right? That starts from the beginning. And that's where a person really doesn't kind of have that infinite purpose behind it, which is I am doing this because this is the lifestyle that won't end. I'm going to keep working out and always be in shape because I always want to be present. I always want to be focused. I always want to be fulfilling my, you know, my mission. And so that's where, and I've made the connection between, because everyone's gone through the cycles of working out, I'm not working out, but for the last like 5-6 years, I've made that connection. I've made the connection where if I'm not healthy, if I don't have that, then I have a loss. If I come to my office, if I come to my family, and I don't have that vitality, and that compels me to just keep on doing it, regardless of like weight loss or hitting this thing or doing this thing. So it's interesting. I think it applies, you know, to all of those areas. Okay, so I don't want to deviate from this because, again, this is something I've gone through. It's very personal to me, and I see the connection here to everyone, literally everyone. I don't say sometimes that what we do as a business is right for everyone. This is everyone. It's literally everyone. Yeah. So now, so the stages are, you hear this keynote speaker, you corner him, right? You're going through this kind of turmoil. You go, you and I remember this because we were, you know, we knew each other then, and it was a difficult decision for, I remember. And you just move your entire family, brand new child, move your family to Texas. Mm-hmm. And there's all this uncertainty, all this unknown, but you have that conviction, right? So you adopt the philosophy, you do the podcast, which is amazing. I mean, should be a staple podcast of everyone. Then you formulate this kind of membership, which is helping people implement the one thing? Because I'm sure that you've heard a lot of stories where it's like, okay, I know my one thing, but I've done this and this, and they're just not getting, they're not necessarily putting all of the pieces together. So walk us through maybe how you formulated, came up with the membership and what your vision is with that.
During my first 90 days of being in business with Gary and Jay, they gave me a task: deliver $100,000 in revenue in 90 days or less out of thin air. That's what it takes to keep. That's what it takes to keep your job. Yeah. By the way. Okay. So I create this master course called Time Blocking Mastery that help people time block, form power habits that stick. Most business people would say it was a crazy success. A lot of sales, almost no refunds. I remember sitting down with Gary, sharing the results, and I was just so excited. And he looked at me and he said, "Geoff, I think it may be broken." And I looked at him. I said, "Gary, what are you talking about? What do you mean it may be broken? Look at all the sales. Look how many people signed up. Nobody refunded this thing. Look at the results they're getting. This is incredible." And he said, "You've created something that's world class if every single person loves it and they want to share it. Mm-hmm. Is this world class?" And at that moment, my heart just sank. This is when you sit down with a guy who thinks as big as Gary, he just has a different perspective. It's how he's been able to scale a $1 billion company. It was a different lens to look at. So I went back to the drawing board and I asked the question, what does it take to serve people at a world-class level? And when you have that purpose driving your action and you start to figure out what people's biggest challenges are with time, these 305 people that we work closely with, we call them our founding members because they literally were the foundation for what we created. Mm-hmm. The number one thing that we hear from people is, "I love the book. I struggle to live the book." Here's a perfect example. Like you said, it's simple in theory. Time blocking. Schedule time with yourself to do your most important work. Simple in theory, right? Yet how many of you have a regular habit, meaning you do it every day with little to no effort, of scheduling time with yourself to do your most important work? It is on your calendar. We can visibly see it, and you protect it like oxygen, like how you breathe. Simple in theory, seldomly done. We created this thing called Living Your One Thing to provide the accountability in the community so that people can easily live their one thing on a weekly basis. And as a result, we just did this test. We found that 30 minutes a week that people were investing in following the system and the models that we give them, they were taking back control of 24 to 32 hours a month.
Oh, man.
Meaning 24 to 32 hours a month that you are currently wasting doing 80% work, saying yes to other people's...
Or less than 80%.
Correct. Saying yes to other people's priorities, attending meetings you don't need to be in, checking email no more than you need to be checking. All of a sudden you start saying no, and you start channeling all that time into the things that matter most.
Yep. No, it's one of the, and I love using kind of just anecdotes and analogies. It's kind of like you're, riding a bike, right? Or you're in a car, like if you're a sports car guy, like, speed is not measured by RPMs, right? That's the speed of, the motor, how fast it's going. But if you're in first gear and someone else is in, same RPM at fifth gear, they're going to win. So it's one of those things where I think people confuse this idea of working hard. And, I know the buzzword has been hustling, used by a number, not to say that that's bad. It's more of, hustling, doing what?
Right.
Do everything. Because if you try to do that, like you're not going to get it. You're going to be in first gear the entire time. So, talk to us about just, how, maybe how the membership, how it works, like specifically, and,
Sure.
what people are walked through, like what's the, how long does it take to get through the whole thing? And, I know the maintenance side of it is, 30 minutes or so per week. Like walk us through just kind of how it's going to help somebody implement the one thing.
I'll tell a story to give you some context before I walk you through the particulars, because it'll really help paint the picture. I was in a mastermind with Gary, and we're in the room are the top 100 agents in the entire world. And Gary said something because somebody asked a question about working hard. And he said, working hard is cheating. And you saw all the heads kind of cocked to the side like a puppy dog and go, He said, working hard is cheating because you can work hard doing the wrong actions and muscle your way to a result. That's what you see people doing when they talk about hustle. He goes, the challenge with that and the reason it's cheating is because you end up cheating yourself out of what it means to actually live a life. If you want to truly live an extraordinary life, not ordinary, not even good, not great, extraordinary, you have to hold yourself accountable to working a set number of hours, being as effective as possible with your 20% items, the 20% that really matter, as efficient as possible with the 80% so that you can shut it down at a pre-prescribed time and actually live a life. Here's how this helps you accomplish that. Clarity, control, and community. We every week come together for a check-in, we call it, where we walk you through the models and the system so that you have crystal clear clarity on your goals. We provide the space for you to ask questions to help you go on a journey to discovering your purpose. And then we help you take control of your time by helping you get clarity on your priorities. If you ask me what is the one thing I absolutely must get done this week, and I do not earn the right to focus on anything else until I get it done, I could tell you exactly what it is without hesitation. And I can tell you what it is every single week because I know what it is. And I act in order of priority, meaning I do not check email until that one thing is done. I do not go chat with people at the water cooler until my one thing is done. I act in order of priority because nothing else matters. On Gary's desk is a piece of paper that says, until my number one priority is done, everything else is a distraction.
Okay, let me so, because here's the thing is, this type of tool I would say is almost required, right? It's more of, there's every situation, every person is different, right? Everybody has their priorities, everybody has their, job responsibilities, everybody has their, an engineer or they're a visionary, or everybody's in different roles, right? So really looking at the application, it's very difficult to specify that to an extent. So that's why I would say the membership would be vital, because it helps a person really discover what it is and then actually create some sort of a system or process to execute.
Yes.
So, and then, but I would so the membership again is designed for that, but this is, we only have a few minutes left. This is, I don't really, I'm putting you on the spot by asking this question, but when you presented your success to Gary, he said, he wanted to be world class. It was a success. You hit your goals. So have you run this course by him yet?
The proof is in the pudding, and we did it with our founding members.
Awesome.
By how many of them at the end of the day, what were their ratings on it, which they told us 30 minutes a week helped them take back control 24 to 32 hours a month. That is a massive success. And they are wanting to turn around and share it now.
That's amazing.
Now we know we created something that's world-class because people are getting results.
Okay. Dude, I'm excited. I haven't finished it because it just came out, I think, did it come out yesterday?
Yesterday.
So I've gone through a number of the modules. All right. So let's talk about how someone can learn more. I mean, you have a website, theonething.com, you have your podcast, of course, the One Thing. So we're going to create a unique link, which is paradigmlife.net / the number one, or one spelled out, ONE. And someone can learn more. Do you, and the pricing, I think you guys are letting someone do a 7-day trial for $1, right?
$1.
Yeah.
And then it's $1 trial for 7 days. And then if you want to stick with it, it's $1 a day after that. So $30 a month. I mean, truth is, folks, we could be charging $500 a month for this. And that's not an understatement. Easy. But our mission is to help 100 million people take back control of their time. Yeah. And so we'd rather go for scale and really impact people, which is why we price it that way.
Well, I can't wait to share it. I'm actually doing an event with advisors Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week, and I've kind of tweaked a couple of my presentations for this too, because that's the thing. It's like everyone looks at their life and it's like, okay, I don't have enough time. I mean, how often people say that? It's like I've all this done. I'm doing this and this and this and this. Like everybody has the time. It's just the priority associated with how you allocate it. This right here just kind of doesn't blow it all up. It makes it incredibly efficient, and it's life. I haven't gone through it, so I can't speak to the results, but this is what I've been studying after a tremendous amount of pain over the last, like, not 9 months ish, where I struggled with meaning. I struggled with purpose, and it took a lot to get through it. And the study that I've done, I've settled on almost this exact same principles. And I can't say exact 'cause I haven't gone through the course yet, but that's what I've settled on. I told you that too. So I'm stoked out of my mind to share this with everyone. So yeah, we'll get it out through the podcast, obviously. If you guys, if you subscribe to our newsletter, subscribe to our email list, then we're going to be sending that out as well. Also, our show notes will have the link, also a link to all of Geoff's stuff and all of the One Thing stuff.
And if you guys end up checking it out, and it's because the doors are only open for a few weeks, and that's just because we want to get people in, and then we're closing the doors because we want to serve them at the highest capacity. And we want to make sure that we can build the systems and the models, you're hearing that again, so that we can continue to provide world-class experiences. Then we'll open them later. So if you hit it later, we'll open it later in the year, but give it a try.
July 30th, right? July 30th is when it closes. So.
Yeah. And we're putting a guarantee behind it, so you'll get your money back if you're not happy.
All right, man. I'm excited to share this with you all. Definitely check out the site. If anything, just go listen to his podcast. I mean, I would say listen to his podcast before you listen to this one. But Geoff, I can't thank you enough, man. I mean, you're an inspiration to me because it's one of those things where I look at what you do and the impact that you're making, and it's inspirational. Because doing what you've done, moving, overcoming adversity. I mean, walking into a business of billionaires and being like, "Hey, I'm gonna hit whatever you tell." I mean, that takes a lot of, in Spanish, cojones, right? And that's where I would say, like, you're living it. You're living proof of it. I can't wait to see what's gonna become of it. And so, hats off to you. I'll kind of give you the salute. But thanks for what you do, man. Appreciate our friendship, appreciate you and everything you've done. I'm stoked for everyone to kind of meet you if they haven't already and see what you've been working on for the last couple of years. So any final words before we sign off?
Whether it's this episode, whether it's anything else you've heard from Patrick or any podcast or book you've ever read, consuming content is great, yet the greatest value will come when you put it into action. So my question for you is, based on our time here today, what's the one idea that you are going to take and put into action? And what is that one thing that you can do such that by doing it would make everything else easier or unnecessary? Put it on your calendar, protect it like the air you breathe, and watch what happens.
All right, dude, now you gotta take the mic out and be like, right? I'm just kidding. You don't really do it. All right, Geoff. Hey, man. Awesome to have you on. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this podcast. We did a video of this, so if you guys want to check it out, just go to our YouTube channel, which is YouTube.com/The Wealth Standard. And Geoff, I'm gonna have you on. I'll just bug you. I have your cell phone, so I can text you and bug you until you
do it
on the next few months. But thank you so much, man. Really appreciate you. And everyone, thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
This is the Wealth Standard Podcast, the gold standard in all things financial.